Hello, and welcome to the Daring to Succeed podcast. I'm your host, Juliana Yao Jorgen, and today I wanted to chat with you about the concept of overthinking as something maybe potentially helpful for those of us who just can't stop thinking about details, especially in high pressure situations. This came up recently in a conversation I had with a leader who is navigating a high risk situation to her career. And we momentarily talked about someone who was a known gossip who could potentially derail her plans. We laughed a little because we were essentially gossiping about gossip. And she quickly said, "Well, I guess we shouldn't spend too much time on that." But I interrupted her and said, "Well, maybe we should." And then I went on to explain that basically what happens is our primitive protective brains are there to assess threats and try to neutralize them. We're often told to downplay things that may not actually be threats, or just to be reasonable or logical or not play the office politics game, which is fine in theory, but still poses a problem when our protective brains just can't give up on that possible threat, even though our executive brains know better. Or maybe it doesn't. What's actually happening is our system is flagging something that might be a risk to our strategy, a decision, or whatever we're encountering in our day. And by ignoring it, that signal persists without resolution. So, because we've been talking about her strategy for a while, she softened up a little bit and said, "Sure, let's play it out and see if it's really a threat." What we uncovered wasn't as important as the fact that we actually did play out the actual probability of that person being a threat to her strategy. What happened in the conversation is we basically surfaced for her executive brain the likelihood of the person behaving in a certain way based on past behavior, and then how, in the most likely situation, others might respond based on their past behaviors, and then what that all means to her strategy. I mean, we could have very well skipped that entire part of the conversation, but by indulging in it, what we actually did was tell her protective brain, "Thank you for flagging this as a risk. We've assessed it. Here's the outcome. Now let's move on." The rest of the conversation went extremely smoothly, not because we spent time gossiping, but because we finally allowed her protective brain to be acknowledged for what it does best: threat detection. And it also allowed her executive brain to logically work through the problem instead of relying on fear, emotions, or gossip. And since that conversation, I've had so many others with leaders and noticed that same pattern. When leaders' primitive brains are flagging potential threat and those threats remain unassessed, it creates cognitive drag. That constant desire to look at that situation and the constant internal struggle to ignore it until we finally make a move, make a decision, or sit uncomfortably with it and postpone the decision or action indefinitely. And there's actually no resolution at all. For some people, this level of inspection may read as overindulgence, navel gazing, or procrastinating because we're looking for something that isn't even really an issue. But what I've seen time and time again is that leaders can finally relax when they allow their protective brains to do their job, process that potential threat quickly, and just move on. So the next time you find yourself fixated with something, keep hearing that little voice inside your head saying, "Oh, don't worry about it." Maybe ask yourself, "Hey, can I worry about it just a little bit?" And then allow your executive brain to work through the process to see if there really is something to worry about. Because the issue is less about what may or may not happen, but acknowledging that the two parts of your brain are actually doing their job. And that the very threat detection is what allows us to survive and thrive in both our career and our lives. Okay, that's it for now. I'll see you next time.